Hi, this video is about this model that I've received from a user on the FreeCAD forum. And so you can see they've built up a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff, and they've got some organization underway, and they've run into some issues. There's some surfaces they don't like, that they have a pinch, and they're not sure, they can't figure out how to move forward to finish blending these surfaces. So they've agreed to let us use this model for a video, which is nice because I'll be able to show this user what I would do, give them some advice, and along the way I'm going to be dealing with a lot of fairly standard issues and workflows for Silk on how to handle your model when you start having a lot of stuff. So I figured that this could be interesting to a lot of people. So the user said in their post that they have a pinch surface and that they cannot blend. So it could be talking about a few things. Like if you rotate this around, you see that there's an edge right here between these two surfaces. That's kind of normal, and the user does know how to do a basic blend, but then there's another issue where they are using, I'm not sure if it's a he or whatever, so where they are using a triangle that I consider to be of low quality. So see here, we're at the very end of the model, and so we see there's this solid object here, which appears to just be made from these two surfaces, so it's actually a shell, right? But then if I back up from that, I see two control grids. Now these are blend type grids. You can see it's a type 6-4 grid that was made from 2 grid 4/4s. That's what the name of it means right here. But then I work backwards and I see a bunch of stuff on top of each other. It's kind of hard to see how it all started, which is typical. It's not easy to organize things. And if I look back towards the beginning, I'm going to collapse some of these things. Okay, here I see, a sketch with some, I consider these layout items, right? These are not really, right here. See, up to this point, it was not really Silk stuff, but now we get into the control polygons and the control grids and these cubic curves. Now we're dealing with Silk objects. So in order to help, I'm going to need to understand this model better. And in order to do that, the best thing is just for me to start reorganizing it. You see, the user has been organizing their stuff along the way. And now it's the model tree is just about filled up. It's a good time to organize stuff some more. So I'm going to share what I normally do to organize a model. And hopefully along the way we will find the problems the user is dealing with and a solution. I'm pretty sure I've already looked at it. I know I have a solution. So here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to just create some new folders. And I'm going to drop stuff in here. The first folder I'm going to call view sets. And we're not going to be dealing with it for a little while, but it's nice to have it at the top. And we are now able to reorganize folders in FreeCAD, but for a long time you couldn't. So I'm kind of very picky about trying to create things in the right order. The next folder we're going to have is going to be for layouts. And by layouts, I mean references, planes, sketches, anything that doesn't actually use the Silk functions. Then after the layouts, we're going to have the Silk design. And after the Silk design, we're going to have CAD operations. So I think that's a good start right here. And these folders are going to allow us to sort out all of this. So I'm actually going to delete these last two here, but I'm going to save this one. I'm going to call it stuff to sort. And I'm going to take everything and I'm going to drop it in stuff to sort. And the reason I do that is because for me it's easier to grab stuff. Now I have all this stuff at the below here, but it's easy to grab this spreadsheet and put it in layouts. This rib thing right here, I'm going to put that in layouts. And so it's just a shorter drag and drop. Instead of dragging from the top all the way to the bottom, I have it at the bottom so it's easy to drag up into here. So all these ribs, all these things, these are all layout. Basically, silk doesn't start onto here. So I'm going to grab this, put that in layout. Now let's see, now I can quickly turn on and off. I can see all the users' datum planes, their sketches. And now we've hit the level where like, okay, these are silk things. These are control polygons. These are all made from this tool right here, Control Poly 4, and this was applied to various sketches in the layouts. So I'm actually going to fix the typo. Control Poly, I'm going to put a plural on that, Control Polys, and that goes into the silk design. Then Control Grid. Okay, once again, I'm going to put an S so it's plural. It helps me notice the difference faster between an object and a group of objects. That goes into the silk design. Now, these datum planes, they were in the model tree after some silk stuff, but they're not necessarily dependent on the silk stuff. So if these depend on something that was done with the silk objects, then it should go into this folder. But if not, then it should just go into the layout. Since you see this one, map mode deactivated, it's not attached to anything. This, boom, this goes into the layouts. This guy right here, this datum plane rabbit, it says that it's on map mode object XY, but it's not actually attached to anything. It's certainly not attached to a silk object. So boom, that goes into layouts. Okay, so now we have more stuff in our layouts. We have all these datum planes, we have a line, and then we have all the node sketches. And the node sketches is what the user has created to attach the silk design to, right? So these node sketches are connected with control polygons, and then the control polygons are used to make grids and also to make curves right here. But let's slow down and do things in order. The next thing we have in stuff to sort is this solid. Okay, so this is just a solid. It goes into the CAD section. It was made from silk stuff, but it represents leaving the silk stuff. So I'm just going to put it in there. We have more stuff that needs to go back above. See these cubic curves. These are connected, but each of these cubic curves corresponds to one of the control polygons. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to put it in the silk design. And then there's something important that actually took me a long time to figure out in this model is where are the basic surfaces? It turns out they're all the way down here, right? You see, so this solid thing was made by taking these surfaces and making a shell out of them. My guess is that the user had these surfaces up here above, but then they decided to make this folder and drag them down. I'm going to drag it back up. And so now what we have, I'm going to hide this right here. What I now have in the silk design is what I call the primary design. It's the main surfaces that are controlled by the layout sketches. And then we're going to chop them up and blend them. And I'm going to leave the stuff to sort aside for a little while, and I'm going to talk about these primary. This is the primary design, and right here we can already see where one of the problems the user has is coming from. You see this grid right here. I'm going to highlight the entire grid. You see it right there in green. It is very distorted and it has a lot of weird stuff in it. A normal grid is like what you see over here on the right. So let's pick that. Let's pick this one. Let's hide the control polygons because they're hiding the edge. Actually, let's hide this. Let's hide that. A normal grid is made of all quadrilateral sections. It doesn't have to be rectangular. It could be at an angle, but everything has 4 sides. The entire grid has 4 sides, and all the sections, all the cells inside the grid have 4 sides. So this is true for this one over here, right? We have 4 curves, four control polygons, four curves, and we get a normal grid. Then here we have four control polygons, four curves, and bam, we get a normal grid. But now here, there's only three control polygons. It's my kind of, it almost looks like there's four sides here, but this is actually one thing. And so that's an important thing here we should fix. You see, there's all these curves. See, there's all these curves right here, but we're not getting curves for this last part of the control polygon. So let's add these curves. Right here, this guy right here, add the curve. See, I'm going to hide the control polygon by hitting spacebar. I have the curve on the curve on these. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to drop it into the cubic curves. Show them all. Okay, see, I'm still missing one. I'm missing this. I'm going to select that, show the curve, hide the control polygon, and now, oh, it didn't go into where it went below, not inside. So yeah, I want it to go inside. Now for every control polygon made from the layout, I have curves. I have curves for all of them, right? And so that's, I don't know, something got double clicked and it thinks I want to edit, so I'm going to cancel out of that. So I have all my control polygons, all my curves. Oh, there's this one right here still down below. I'm going to drop that in here. That's one of the new ones I just created. Okay, so hide everything, all my curves, okay, all my control polygons, all my grids. So see, it's nice to have the curves because the curves make it very clear that this piece right here is three-sided, right? So it's very different from these guys over here. Now, these grids here were made using this tool right here, and this three-sided curve was as well. And I think it was made like this. This curve, then this guy, then this guy, and then the user hit this. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Oh, that's because I'm supposed to be working from the control polygon, not the curves. I'm a dummy. So we go right here. If we pick this, then that, then this, and we hit this, we're going to create this curve. And I believe that's the same one. Yeah, it's the same one. Oh no, it's not the same one the user created. Okay. So the one the user created is like this, and it's got the collapse point at the tip right here. Okay. So the way this was created is this is where the crazy part of the grid is, where there's two triangles here at the corner. You see, this is a normal quadrilateral here, normal quadrilateral here, and this is a corner here. So what happened is the user selected starting at the crazy corner, around the side, to the other, back to the corner. Okay, and that's what creates this grid. There's several things wrong with this grid. And you're not really supposed to use it. What I recommend if you need a triangular shape is to go like this. Is to start from the tip of the shape and go around and then select this guy. And this guy is much nicer because even though there's a lot of points collapsing in this corner and I don't have a square, this has squares everywhere else except at the tip. So this portion here is normal and we'll be able to blend it. When you compare that to this other grid, this other grid has normal rectangles here, and then it has the really complicated part right here. This is just not a very good grid overall. And if you look at the function and you hit here to get its tooltip, it'll tell you that the option of selecting 3 grids and using this tool is flawed. So it's just best to avoid it and to use this other tool instead. But this grid here is capable of producing a surface. And even though this surface is flawed, it's not that obvious to see how it's flawed. And there's a lot of times where it's just fine. And so you might as well use it if you want. If you're closing a surface and you're not intending to blend. But we are intending to blend. And this surface is a problem. So we shouldn't be using it. And I will demonstrate why the surface is a problem after I finish sorting. But the key is we've identified by working along and organizing things, I have identified one of the user's problems is that this grid is a low quality grid that the user probably did not intend to use. And I found all the surfaces, so now I have things a little bit more organized and I can turn things on and off pretty easily. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all this other stuff that I had created to explain the tools. And so what else is there to sort? See, now when we sort, we've got these points on these curves. We've got a bunch of segments, a bunch of stuff. All of this is related to segmenting and sorting. But what we have in here is the primary design. So we need some folders to set it apart. As we sort, we need to be able to quickly see the difference between the primary design, the segmentation, which is about chopping things up into little bits and pieces, and then finally the blending, which is about taking all the little bits and pieces and joining them back into a single unified thing. So I'm going to drop that in here, drop that in here. This is all getting ready for the, oh, this one didn't get dropped in the correct space. Now I need to drop this back down below. What did it do? The blending should not be above, it should be. It's nice that it's letting us move stuff around, but it's still not easy to move stuff around just the way you want. But it's possible. So all these original folders here, everything that I had already brought in, that is part of the primary design. Now we're going to take everything that's left in here, and it's either going to be part of the segmentation or part of the blending. So in the primary design, I'm going to hide everything except the curves, because the curves are helpful right now to understand what's going on. If you look at these point curves, all these points are defined on a curve, and they're going to allow us to chop up these curves into little pieces. So that is part of the segmentation. This right here, these are little pieces. Well, let me hide the curves. These are the little bits and pieces you get from using these points to cut up the curves. So they are part of the segmentation. So what is this? Oh, this is this part of segmentation, but this is jumping ahead a little bit. We're a little bit further along. What we really need before we do any of this is we need these cubic surface cuts. See, now these are the curves once they have been cut. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these cubic curves cut. I'm going to put them into the segmentation. And let's go ahead and just sort out these things right here. These points are fine. These control poly cuts, we're still missing some stuff. See, we're missing a lot of these control poly cuts, right? Because I mean, all the curves we see are for the area where we don't have any polygon cuts. So let's go back in here and let's look at more stuff. Ah, right here. This is a big folder full of control polygons. So let's grab that and let's put that in the segmentation. Okay, so now I think we can pretty much ignore what's in here for a minute, and let's come back in here and sort this stuff. Because you see here, if we hide the curves, we have two folders full of these little control polygon cuts. This one appears to have everything we want, so these guys are copies, but that doesn't mean we can just delete them because we don't know which ones were used to make the curves, right? So we kind of want to combine all of this stuff. Let's see, this one has more of them, so I'm going to say that's the That's the main folder for these types of objects. I'm going to drop the other folder into it. Now, it was labeled by the user control poly for cutting the curves. That's not exactly correct. These are the control polygons that are made from cutting the curves. So let's change the name here to from. And then these curves here are the cuts that result from these control polygons. So if you take all of these control polygons and you make a curve out of it, you're going to get these objects here. But you'll notice that we have a lot more control polygon curves than we have cubic curves cut. So what's up with that? Let's hide these curves. Let's turn on these guys. And let's turn on these cuts. We can see that there's at least, okay, we don't have, for some of these we don't have cuts. So there's at least this one here. We need that. Let's give it a curve and hide it. Then let's take this one. Let's give it a curve. Okay. Let's grab these new objects. Put them into these curves right here. But we still have way too many. So what we need to do is we need to figure out which of these are doubles. So for example, can I just delete this? It says, oh no, if I delete this one, I'm going to lose this object. So I don't want to do that. What about this one? Try to delete. No. So this is being used. This is being used. This is being used. Okay. So I'm just going to delete the ones that are not being used. This is being used. This is being used. Oh, this disappeared without any issues. Okay, that's fine. Delete. No, this is being used. No, this is being used. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Right here, this. No. This disappeared without any issues. This disappeared without any issues. This, no. This, no. This, oh, this disappeared without any issues. This one here, well, no, we know we just used that one, so it's not going to be good. We can't delete it, but oh, this disappeared without any issues. This disappeared without any issues. So now if I just take all of these here and I just drop them outside, just going to delete this folder. All of these are the same kind of thing. And I should have the same number. Let's count them real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have the same number of things here as here. That's nice. Now let's look at what else we have in here. We have these grids. Okay, this is a grid that was made by cutting the original surface. Let me show other people who are not the user what this means is if you take the original surface, let's hide these control polygons. Let's make all these curves bigger so we can see them. So line width 4, point size 5. Okay, now we can see them. You see these little pieces of curve go between the cut points. If I take this surface and I control select this little piece of the curve down here at the bottom, and I apply this function here, which slices all the way through, it creates a grid which represents a portion of the underlying surface. Now with this grid I can do several things. One, I can just use it to recreate a portion of the surface, which is sometimes something we want to do, or I can use it in pairs to create a blend grid. So I'm going to delete that right here, delete that right here. These were just my new objects, but so that's what the user had right here. So these are part of the segmentation. These are segment grids, and there's two types of segment grids that we're going to run into. We're going to have segment grids to restore. Let's fix the typo. We're going to have segment grids to restore, and we're going to have segment grids to blend. And these are going to go into the, and actually these are going to go still into the segmentation. So this one right here that the user made is right in between, is right on the edge of a seam. So we're going to want to blend from here to here. So that is to blend. This guy right here, that's on the other side of the seam, but it's going to blend with this other one, so that is also to blend. Then this guy right here, let's hide everything. Let me show you this new object that the user created right here. That is a single grid of type 6-4, which means it has 6 segments going across and 4 segments this way. And the 6 segments are in the direction of blending. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. So this grid right here represents blending these 2 grids. Let me show that again. So these 2 grids, which were made by cutting the surfaces into pieces, create this segment, create this blending grid. So let's take this blending grid, let's put it in this folder here, and then this blending grid can be used to create this blending surface. So let's spend a minute on that. Let's hide this thing. If we hide all the cubic curves, we hide the point cuts, you see that this blending surface does not have any irregularities in it like before. So there's no, you can't see the joint, you can't see where the joint used to be. Whereas if you look at the original surfaces, you can see where the surfaces connect. Right? You can see that there's something going on right here. Whereas if I hide it, and if you look at this surface right here, there is nothing going on right here, and this one corresponds to the middle of the joint between these two. So whereas before we used to be able to see a line in between the two, on the blend surface you cannot. That's what the blend is for. So it took two pieces of the original surfaces and made a new grid for it. Okay. So after that is where the user ran into issues making the whole thing. So this was good, and this corresponds to a real use case. But then after that, when I look at this, you see this, these two other pieces of the grid. See, these are pieces of the original surfaces, which is fine. But these pieces of the original surfaces, the user joined them to the other pieces right here. So you see, they took these two grids and then they blended it into one grid and then blended it into other grids. So the first time the user blended across the seam, which is correct, which is what we want to do. But then the second time, after that, they blended the original surfaces back together. And then they created two surfaces from there, which is a thing you can do, but it doesn't accomplish much purpose because you just get the original seam back because you're not blending across. So this right here is correct. Blending using two pieces of the original surface to make a join between these two, but then trying to reuse all this stuff and blend it back together is incorrect. What you normally do is you leave a little piece of the original surface on each side. And so now if I take these edge segment grids and I apply surfaces back to them, what you will see is that these actually connect very well to the blended surface. I need to improve the quality a little bit so we can see that. Let's see. Let's take all of these and I'm going to apply 2 degrees of deviation, 0.1. And so now you can see, and let's compare this to the original curves. See, in the original curves, these were 2 separate surfaces with a sharp edge in between them. And what I've done is I've converted them into 3 pieces. I have one piece of the original surface right here, one piece of the original surface right here, and then a blend in the middle. And now that I've done this, the blend connects very well to the original pieces of the surfaces on both sides, and the blend is well blended in the middle. So there's no line. You can see a bump, but that is the transition. That is the design currently. And so that's how you jump from one surface into the blend, out of the blend, back into the original surface. And that gives you something that does not have a sharp edge down the middle. Okay, so now we basically have almost everything the user had sorted out, because at this point, now that I've shown how the intention is to go from one surface into the blend into the other surface, I hope you can see that this was a good piece. It was part of a grid, and we ended up using it as a grid to restore. And this guy right here, we also ended up using it as a grid to restore. But these guys here is not something we can really do anything with, because this is the same surface cut in half and then reblended. This is not a useful construct. And so this is the same thing. And these surfaces were made from those. So I think it's fairly safe to say that we should just delete this. We should just delete this, and that means that this solid is not useful either. We no longer have anything in the stuff to sort folder. And now we have, the only thing we have that's new, that wasn't part of what the user had, is this concept of restored portions of the surfaces. Now, if you're only blending in one direction, for sure, you can fully blend one surface into another, right? So I could, instead of regenerating the surface here from this segment, I could theoretically, I could say, well, I'm gonna take half of this and blend it over to this side, and then half of this and blend it over to this side, so there'll be nothing left to restore in the middle. That would work. And you don't technically have to keep a piece of the original surface in the middle if you're only blending in one direction. But in 99% of cases, that will not be the case. See, right now we're just doing an exercise to blend these surfaces together. What ends up happening in a real model, a large model, is different. And let me just do a save as on this model right here, so we have it restructured. Okay, let me show you how it typically works on a large model. And what I'm pointing towards is that you do in fact want to blend in multiple directions. Almost 99% of the time, what you actually want is to blend in multiple directions. So here's an example. This is a fuselage thing on this little airplane-like project thing that I'm working on. So here you can see it takes a bunch of sketches to make it happen, but then from the sketches you create the polygons. From the polygons you can create both the curves and the grids. From the curves you can define the cutting points, and from the grid you can define basic surfaces. Now once you have cutting points and curves defined and surfaces, you can define the basic segmentation. And right here, what I'm showing is the restored surfaces, which are parts of the actual original pieces. And here you can see the grids that are going to be blended. Right above that, I'm showing the blended grids. So you can see here, this is a piece of the original surface. And the piece of the original surface on the other side, you select both of them, you apply the blend, boom, you get a blend grid. And then here I'm showing in light blue, in almost green, such a light blue that it's almost greenish. These are the first level blends where I'm blending from one edge into the other. But you see, I'm doing it in two directions. I'm doing it from here to the top, and I'm also doing it from front to back. This is what I mean by blending in two directions. When you blend in two directions, you need to save a little piece of the original surface. I mean, I think you should. I think it's better to design with pieces of the original surface, but when you blend in two directions, you have to. You can't just completely absorb the surface, because then how would you would have nothing, nowhere to go in the other side right here. So by the way, what I'm showing here with all these views, this is what I end up doing with view sets. All the data, everything is actually over here, all blobbed on top of each other. And so in order to work on it, you can only show a few pieces at once. So by having these linked view sets on the side, I can see what the impact of each operation is on the actual data at all times. But I don't have to show everything. So for example, in this actual data, I could be working on just this section. And in this section, I could be working on just this sketch. So that's something we can work on later in this model, is how to set up these view sets. But the important point I wanted to make right now is that this tool right here can be useful if you absolutely only need to do blending in one direction, but the majority of the time what you will want to do is blending in two directions. So that's important to keep in mind, but it's a good exercise to blend in one direction because it's easier. So there's nothing wrong with doing it in one direction. It's just, I want to point out that it's important to keep pieces of your original surfaces in your design. And I think it makes for better models anyways. And so here you can see a model blended in two directions. These are original surfaces. The very light blue, almost green, is the first level blending, and then the dark blue is second level blending. And if you look at the piece at the top here, let's take it out of perspective because it's too hard to handle. You can see that this blended model at the top here has fairly good highlight flow from surface to surface. Another thing to notice about this model in comparison is that it uses as few sections as possible, as far away from each other as possible, which is not the case in this model, because here in this model we have a lot of sections really close to each other, and so that is actually a challenge. In Silk you want to use as few sections as possible, but we can work with this. Let's see what we can make out of it. So anyway, this is I think a good long-term goal is to have your model arranged like this so that you can see the specific aspects of the model. You don't have to look at everything. But you can see the parts you want, and then that way you can work on just, when you look in the Silk design, you can look at just the specific aspect that you want. So here you can see one thing at times. Here in this case, here are my primary surfaces. It's the same as what I'm showing here. These are the primary surfaces. And these will drive most of the design. So if these are good, then the design can turn out really good. If these are iffy, then the final design will still be iffy. So primary surfaces right here. Then these are the portions that we're going to keep. these are okay, so these are the portions of the primary surfaces we keep. Here are the first level blends between the surfaces, and here are, see, I think it's these guys. Yep, here are the blends of the blends. So let's close out of this. This was just to show an example of a large model. So when we're looking at this, we have to decide what these grids are. Are these grids to restore a little piece of the surface, or are these grids to blend directly into the next thing? Long term, we should keep a little piece, but just for the sake of brevity, let's just, and this being just a simple blending exercise, let's work on the way the user was working, and it seems to be the idea was to absorb the surfaces into each other. So in order to do that, let's see what we have and what we need. So this is good, and we have these surfaces to blend, so these are segment grids to restore. Let's go ahead and create, so outside the segmentation, let's create a third area for restored surfaces. Restored surface segments. That way they'll be easy to find and turn on and off. I'm going to stick that right here. Oh, it went inside. That's not what I want. This is a pain. Okay, first I'm going to put it in the segmentation, then I'm going to put it, okay, I'm going to put it in the select design. And I'm going to put it right below this guy right here. Okay, so these two surfaces go into here. And then we have a little bit of blending. Okay, so let's see if we can slice up this surface over here and blend it right into this one, just so we can get a quick solution. So let's show the points on curves. Okay, let's show the cubic curves cut. Let's hide this surface. So one thing I'm seeing here is that these guys here don't have anything for the last surface, it looks like. So when you look at the original cubic curves, and you notice that they're smaller because I made the segments bigger, we don't have anything over on this side. So let's make a segment here. And by the way, we don't need the segments, we don't need the points on both sides, and we don't need the segments on both sides if we're only doing a blend in one direction. The reason you carry over the point to the other side is if there's another surface on this side and you want to match the cut. So for now, we only need to add 2 points, one for the cut right here and one at the tip. So I'm going to click this right here, add a point, it's tiny. I'm going to add another one right here. Oh, sometimes you have to make sure to click off of everything and then re-click the curve for the function to work. Okay, this time it worked. I'm going to make these 2 points the same size as the user made his, which is 20. Okay, so now they look the same. See, now I've got these point curve. I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to make it be a little bit closer to the name of the object. I'm going to call it point on curve, and I'm going to call it points on curve. So it's kind of the exact name of the function, but then it's plural. Okay, so let's hide this, grab these 2 new points, and put them on here. And these points, it's definitely helpful to label them. See, now this guy is in the middle. This is going to be a cut point. And then this guy here is almost at the end. This is going to be a corner point. Actually, I'm going to make that all caps. Corner. You see that the original user had labeled all of his so that they would be able to find them, because it's not easy to click on them. FreeCAD just doesn't want to let you click on these points easily. So now I've created these guys. This one see, right now it's letting me click on it, but then later when I really want to, it won't. See, this to be a corner, it should be either, the U value should be either 0 or 1. So this is really close to 0, so I'm going to put it to 0 right here. And then this cut value, it's at 0.56. Let's just make it 0.5. Okay. So now we can actually hide all of these away. We don't need to be seeing these. We don't need to be seeing these grids. All right, now what I need is in order to use this tool, I need to select a curve and then select my 2 points. Boom and boom. See, this one I know where they are, so it's really easy to find. So first the curve, then the 2 points. And see, it created a tiny little polygon here. Now it's going to be trickier. I need to select this guy and the cut point, and I need to select this guy. See, now FreeCAD's just not letting me. It's just not letting me select that object. So I need to go back up here, and you see how, okay, look at the, you see how when I hover over one of these, it's going to highlight in blue in the tree. So I'm just going slow, you see right here, I just found it. See right here, bam, right there, it just turned blue. This is the one I want. So now I have this curve and these 2 points. I create this little piece right here. Now, what kind of objects are these? These things here are control polys from cutting the curves. So real quick, I'm going to make curves from them. Then, and these 2 curves, I'm going to make large, just like we made the other ones, 4 line width, 5 point width. And then these 2 here will go into the folder control poly from cutting the curves. And then these guys here will go into cubic curves cut. And so let's be clear. These are cubic curves for cutting the surfaces. That's what these are for. These are from cutting the curves, and these are for cutting the surfaces. So I'm going to hide all the original curves, hide this guy. Okay, so now we have our cubic curves for cutting the surfaces, or sections of the original curves. And now I have this guy right here. I just need to show the original surface. So when I select this guy and select this curve, this surface, this curve, and then I select this tool, which only cuts in one direction. Oh, you can see. Now we're back to the issue of the weird grid that I said I didn't like and people shouldn't use. Because this grid has a crazy point, so let me hide the new grid I just created. Because this grid has a crazy point right here, when you try to slice along this direction, it's going to give you a crazy result right here. And what that means is, instead of providing a piece of grid that runs some distance along this edge, it just all runs into this corner. So that's bad. We don't want that. So what that means is we don't want to be using this crazy surface. And we don't want to be using this crazy grid right here. So let's just delete this new thing I created. Let's go back to the original. Which one was it? It was this surface. Okay, we don't want it. Delete it. And this is going to break the solid down here. That's okay. We'll have to redo it. Anyways, I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to delete the solid too so we don't get errors. Now that I've deleted the surface, I'm going to delete this control grid. I'm going to turn back on the original control polygons, hide this curves business, hide this points business for now. And so here, there's 2 ways we can go. We could still use that bad grid just in a better position. Let me show you what that looks like. If I want the crazy point to be here, which will allow me to cut over here, I select first the edges that touch. If I want the collapse corner where there's a triangles instead of a rectangle to be here, first I select the polygon that touches close to this one, then I move counterclockwise to here, then I move counterclockwise to here, and when I hit this tool, the crazy corner will be here. And even though this looks weird, this is four-sided, this is four-sided, this is four-sided. If I make a surface from this, you can't really tell that this was a bad grid. I mean, that's why I keep this grid. It's like, I mean, you look in here, you can't really see what's wrong with it until you try to cut it. So really, you could just use this surface here. But let's get some good habits. And so instead of using this, actually I'm gonna keep this grid here to show you the difference. Now I'm gonna hide it, and I'm gonna do the same selection order as before. I want the weird point to be at the tip so that I'm able to blend normally here. So I select the poly that touches the weird point first, and then I move counterclockwise. So it's the same selection, but now I'm going to use this tool. And what this tool does is it rotates the grids around. You see, it just grabbed this edge and it kind of did a sweep. See, these are kind of like radiuses of a circle, and these are kind of like perimeters of a circle. So it also has 3 normal cells on the outer point, and this is just, and when you put a surface on it, it's actually a much higher quality surface. This kind of grid can actually be used, let me turn it back on, this kind of grid right here can actually be used to create very good spheres and ellipses. So why this is not elliptical right now? Well, that's because the control polygon we're throwing in there has this long edge right here, so well, the grid is going to have a long edge right here as well, and that's why it doesn't look circular. But let's compare that to the original grid. See, this original grid, which was of the wrong type, it actually has better continuity along these edges, but it's just absolutely crazy in the middle. So this one is the recommended grid to use, and I'm just going to delete this one. I'm just going to tell everyone, just don't use it. If you need a 3-sided grid, use this rotate grid, and then just be careful where you put this point, because you can blend along this edge, and you can actually blend along this edge here, but you can't blend along these edges right here. You have to use another triangular grid on this side. And that's a topic we can talk about another time with a larger model. For the time being, this is something that we can segment and blend. So let's just do that. Let's just finish and blend this thing. So this right here. This now goes back into our primary design. This is now a primary control grid. And this right here is a primary surface. Let's hide all the control polygons. Let's bring back our cubic curves for cutting the surfaces. Now let's turn on our points just to remind you how we made those curves. Now I'm going to select the surface and this piece of the grid right here. You see that I've made now this time it was able, when I did this segmentation cut, it was able to cut all the way across with a uniform width. Let's make one more. This surface again, and then this little piece towards the crazy corner. Now let's make another cut. And so here's what happens now. This piece here, so let me hide. This grid is considered to be completely normal. It has 4 sides, and each piece is a little quadrilateral. But this piece here is still a funky grid that we need to be careful where we put this point, but it works. We can just put a grid right back on it. So what we've done with this grid here, even though it's funky, is we've used it as a restoration grid. So this is a restored grid surface segment. Oop, no, wrong place. This is a segment grid to restore. And this piece right here is a restored surface segment. So now we have 3 restored surface segments and 1 blend. So what we need now, and that leaves us this piece. Remember that leaves us this grid here, which, like I said, is a normal, perfectly normal grid. This is going to be a segment grid to blend. So earlier I said I was restoring this piece. That was just to make an example to show you how this surface goes into the blend and then goes out of the blend back into the original surface, and to show you that this creates a decent quality surface, which you can see here by watching the highlight. Going across, the highlight going across is fairly uniform. There is some weird stuff going on here, but that is simply what happens when you choose to join these two surfaces. Something's got to give, and so that's what you get right here. But what I'm actually going to do right now is I'm going to delete the surface, and I'm going to go to its grid right here, and I'm going to say, you know what, now this is a grid to blend. So now I'm going to hide the surfaces to restore. I'm going to hide the restored surface segments. I'm going to hide the blend. And now when we look at the segment grids to blend, there's two pairs. There's this piece here and here, and then this piece here and here. We've already blended this piece here. So we've already used up these two, but now we're going to take this and this, and we highlight them both fully. This guy here and this guy here, we select them, and we're going to make a blend grid out of it. That's it right here. I'm going to hide the stuff I had selected. This guy here is just like the same type of thing as this guy here. And when I apply a 6:4 surface to it, I get my blending surface. So now in here, let's go ahead and make two folders real quick. What we have is blend grids. Actually, I'm going to call it blended grids to make it really clear that they're not, that the blend has been done. So this is blended grids, and then here blended surfaces. I'm going to take both of these folders, I'm going to put them into the overall blending folder. I'm going to grab these two grids, put them in the blended grids, grab these two surfaces and put them in the blended surfaces. So now here are my two blend surfaces side by side, and here are my restored surface segments side by side. And let's see, let's give these some quality. Let's see, this is already at 2 and 0.1. That's good. 2 and 0.1. This is at, oh, these two are low quality. Let's make it 2 and 0.1. Okay, now we're good. And so now we have the structure. This whole segmentation, we can hide the whole thing. But when we come out of the segmentation, we have restored surface segments. So these are parts of the original surfaces. And then we have blended surfaces. You know, this actually kind of gets in the way. Let's just put this back in at the top level, and this one at the top level as well. That way we'll just hide this folder, the blending folder, and oh, it's supposed to go into the silk design, not the primary surface. Okay, but now this gives us something a little bit more straightforward. When we want to see, we have the so let's turn off everything. We have the primary design. Then we have the issue of the segmentation, where you show all the bits and pieces of grids. Then we have the restored surface segments. Then we have two grids that were made out of the segmentation. These grids are blending grids. And then there's the blended surfaces made from those grids. So if we take the blended surfaces and the restored surface segments, this is our three surfaces blended together. Now, whether it's a good design or not depends entirely on the primary design, right? These sketches control the shape of the original pieces, right? Remember that the original surfaces look like this. So what I've done is I've taken this with the visible creases and everything in between them, and let's fix this surface. Let's make sure that they're all at a comparable quality. So let's put all of these on 2, all of these on 0.1. Okay, so did it work? Sometimes it takes and sometimes it doesn't take. Okay, so now we're looking at the 3 original surfaces as they were, and you can see a sharp crease right here. You can see a crease right there. And what we have created instead is restored pieces of the original surfaces and blended surfaces in between them. Now, you can still see something in the middle here, but it's actually quite smooth compared to the original surfaces. See, now take a look at this. When I move the camera around, you can see the highlight flowing fairly smoothly. Now, there's something happening here, but the transition is still smooth. Compare this to the original surfaces. See, that's not smooth at all, especially when you run into a hard edge like right here. See, this is not smooth at all. The transition here is not smooth. So the blend doesn't do miracles. The blend is still working with the surfaces you have underneath, but it improves the highlight flow tremendously. So remember, this is this is basically just an exercise because we've only blended in one direction. We haven't actually blended in both directions. And when you want to do that, you have to always save a little piece in the middle. Always save a little piece in the middle, because that way, see, check this out. Just do a little sketch here real quick. If you have original surfaces, so I ask, okay, fine. Let's say you have some original surfaces like this, and then you want to do some segmentation. If you segment from here to here and all the way up to the middle of the next one, you can blend across here, but now you have nothing to blend across in this direction. So what you want to do instead, when you're segmenting, is you want to do something more like this. You want to blend this edge from here to here. And you want to blend this edge here. You want to blend it across from here to here. And then from here to here. I'm doing terrible drawing. But the idea is that you're always going to have, let me highlight here, this needs to be a piece of the original surface. It's because you're going to want to blend between all these edges that automatically it creates this area. Well, there has to be something left here. Otherwise, these are all going to shrink down to a point. And if these all shrink down to a point, then the surfaces completely disappear. So you want to create your blends such that they leave a piece of the original surface, and then that leaves a little piece of the original surface here, but it will also leave a hole. Everywhere there was originally a corner, like right here, there will be a hole left, and that hole can be filled with the rest of the tools on the bar.